What if I told you this prophecy was never meant to reach you, not because it was unimportant, but because it was dangerous, hidden from sermons, removed from conversations, buried beneath silence, and yet it was always meant for this moment? This is not a prophecy about the distant past. It is a warning about what is unfolding right now and why time may be running out. For centuries, kings, empires, and even religious leaders chose what people were allowed to hear. Because some truths don't comfort, they expose. This prophecy doesn't promise safety. It demands awareness. And if you're hearing it now, it may be because silence is no longer an option. There are truths in the Bible that are rarely spoken aloud, verses and warnings that seem to have been carefully tucked away, as if someone decided they were too dangerous to echo in our time. Imagine walking through a vast library where certain books are locked behind glass, marked forbidden. That's exactly how this prophecy feels. Sealed, silenced, hidden from the ears of those who need it most. And when something is hidden so deliberately, the real question is not what is being concealed, but why. Think about it. Throughout history, empires have thrived by controlling what people could hear, read, or believe. From Babylon to Rome, the pattern never changed. Knowledge is power, and hidden knowledge is even more powerful. This silenced prophecy is not just about predicting events. It's about shaking foundations, stripping illusions, and reminding humanity of a reality greater than any throne or empire. That's precisely why it was covered up, because it threatens those who build their kingdoms on lies. Picture a candle in a dark room. One flame seems small, fragile, almost insignificant, but the moment it flickers, it exposes everything that was hidden in the shadows. The dust, the cracks, the truth. That is what this prophecy represents. A light that cannot be extinguished, even if silenced for centuries. Those who tried to suppress it only proved its power, because nobody silences what is irrelevant. They silence what terrifies them. And maybe that's why you are here, listening now. Deep down, you already feel that the story of this world has missing pages, that we have not been told everything. This prophecy is one of those missing pieces, and once revealed, it changes the way you see history, faith, and even your own life. But before we uncover its words, we must look at the voices that carried fragments of it across the ages. The ancient prophets who dared to speak what others feared. When you open the scriptures, you find a pattern, different men in different times, speaking with one voice. Daniel, exiled in Babylon, described visions of kingdoms rising and falling like waves crashing on the shore. Ezekiel, by the river Chebar, saw wheels within wheels and a throne above the firmament. Isaiah thundered about nations trembling, while John, centuries later on Patmos, wrote of beasts, seals, and trumpets. Each one spoke in fragments, yet together they wove a tapestry of one greater message. It is fascinating how they never met, yet their words echo each other like notes in the same song. Daniel's little horn mirrors John's beast rising from the sea. Ezekiel's visions of fire and living creatures remind us of Revelation's living beings before God's throne. Isaiah's cries about judgment and restoration find their fulfillment in John's visions of a new heaven and a new earth. The prophets were separated by centuries, but their spirit was united by the same source. Now imagine these prophets as watchmen on the city walls. Each one stood in a different century, looking into the horizon of time, warning of what was to come. They didn't always understand the full weight of their words. They saw glimpses, shadows, symbols, but they knew enough to cry out, to warn, to write. They became living links in a chain stretching across millennia, carrying fragments of a prophecy that still speaks today. And here's the striking part. If they all pointed toward the same truth, why is it that much of the world remains in the dark? Why are their warnings read but not heard, spoken but not truly believed? Perhaps the answer lies in something even more unsettling, that some books were silenced, some scrolls hidden, and some voices intentionally erased from the story. Which leads us to the next question. What happened to those forgotten writings, and why were they removed? There is something unsettling about the fact that not every book once considered sacred made it into the Bible you hold today. Writings like the Book of Enoch, Sekou Esdras, and the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs were treasured by early believers, quoted by church fathers, and even echoed in Scripture itself. Yet over time, councils and leaders decided some were too controversial, too mysterious, too dangerous to remain. And so they were set aside, pushed into the shadows of history. Take the Book of Enoch, for instance. Jude, in the New Testament, directly quotes it, yet today most Christians have never even heard of it. Why? Because its pages speak of fallen angels, heavenly secrets, and a coming judgment that shakes both heaven and earth. Such revelations challenge human power, exposing realities that kings and rulers would rather leave untouched. By removing the book, the message didn't vanish. It simply went underground, waiting for seekers bold enough to find it. Or consider 2 Esdras, with its haunting visions of an eagle with many heads, a prophecy of empires rising and falling. These texts painted pictures too raw, too explicit, for institutions that sought order and control. Imagine a puzzle with pieces deliberately removed so the full picture cannot be seen. That is what happened with these writings. They were silenced not because they were irrelevant, but because they revealed too much. And yet, despite attempts to erase them, whispers of their truth still reach us. The very fact that these books survived, hidden in caves, preserved in ancient libraries, rediscovered centuries later, proves their weight. Someone wanted them forgotten, but God allowed them to remain. The question is, if the rejected books speak of the same prophecy, what exactly is this hidden message that leaders through history fought to suppress? At the center of every silenced scroll lies a truth so powerful that it cannot be ignored forever. The forbidden message is not merely about dates or timelines. It is about unveiling the real conflict shaping human history. It speaks of a coming judgment where every hidden work will be exposed and every mask torn away. It is a prophecy that declares, kingdoms may rise, religions may twist the truth, but the word of God. It forces us to face the uncomfortable truth that the world is not ruled by chance, but by a divine hand moving history toward its climax. And here's the paradox. While many seek comfort in half-truths, the forbidden message strips away illusions. It is like a mirror showing not just the face we present to others, but the soul we often hide even from ourselves. That's why it unsettles so deeply. It demands change. The message also carries hope, though cloaked in warning. For those who heed it, the prophecy is not destruction, but deliverance. It whispers of restoration, of a kingdom not built by human hands, of a day when tears will be wiped away and justice will finally reign. But to reach that hope, one must first endure the shaking, the unveiling, the fire that refines. This dual edge of warning and promise makes the prophecy both feared and longed for. And now we must ask, if this prophecy is so transformative, why was silence imposed upon it? Why were its words hidden behind layers of history and power? The answer may shock you, for it is not just about theology. It is about politics, control, and the survival of empires. To understand the silencing, we must walk through the corridors of history, where kings, priests, and emperors decided what the people could hear. Throughout the ages, empires discovered a powerful secret. Controlling truth means controlling people. Babylon rewrote the identities of the exiled, giving them new names, new gods, and new customs, hoping they would forget who they really were. Later, Rome mastered this art, burning libraries, outlawing sacred texts, and reshaping spiritual teachings to fit imperial agendas. Silence was not accidental. It was weaponized to secure power. Consider how dangerous prophecy was to rulers. A word from Daniel could shatter the pride of Nebuchadnezzar. A vision from John could unmask the corruption of Rome. These words weren't just religious poetry. They were dynamite, threatening systems built on oppression. To silence prophecy was to protect thrones, to safeguard economies, and to ensure no common man dared to rise with divine authority. The church itself was not immune. In the centuries that followed, leaders often chose which writings were safe for the people and which were too explosive. Councils decided which books belonged in the canon, while others were labeled heretical, hidden, or destroyed. Imagine truths so potent that kings and priests agreed the masses should never hear them. That is how the silence became institutionalized, dressed in robes of authority. Yet silence never fully kills a message. Like seeds scattered in the wind, fragments of these prophecies survived, preserved in caves, whispered by sects, rediscovered by scholars. History may have tried to bury them, but what is buried can also rise again. And in our time, as events unfold with eerie similarity to ancient visions, the silenced words are speaking once more. Which brings us to the question, could the signs of today mirror the warnings of those forbidden prophecies? Look around and you will notice something unsettling. The very events described in ancient visions seem to echo in our headlines today. Wars rumble across continents. Rumors of new conflicts stir daily, and alliances rise and collapse with dizzying speed. Natural disasters intensify, earthquakes, floods, fires, reminding us of a creation groaning under strain. What was once dismissed as symbolic poetry now feels eerily descriptive of our reality. Technology adds another layer to this mystery. Prophets once spoke of knowledge increasing and humanity running to and fro across the earth. Today, information doubles every few months, and global travel shrinks the world into a single neighborhood. Artificial intelligence, surveillance systems, and digital economies make control easier than ever before. The prophecy warned of a world unified under power, unlike anything seen before. And suddenly, it doesn't sound so far-fetched. Even the human heart reflects the prophecy. A rise in selfishness, coldness, and deception marks our generation. We live in an age where truth is twisted, morality is relative, and people chase illusions of power and pleasure. The prophets saw this decline long before it arrived, describing a time when men would call good evil and evil good. Doesn't that sound painfully familiar? All of these signs do not simply point to chaos, they point to convergence. They suggest that history is moving toward a climax, where the forbidden prophecy collides with the visible world. And if these signs are indeed unfolding before our eyes, then the silence around the prophecy is not just historical, it is intentional, orchestrated by powers that fear its unveiling. Which leads us directly to the deeper reality, the invisible conflict behind the scenes, behind politics, behind wars. Behind every act of suppression, there is a conflict not seen with human eyes. The prophets spoke of it as a battle between principalities and powers, forces of light and forces of darkness. This is not myth or metaphor. It is the hidden war shaping our world. Every attempt to silence prophecy is not just a human decision, but a move in this greater struggle for souls. Think of it like a grand chessboard. Kings, emperors, and leaders are pawns moved by unseen hands. While nations fight over borders, the real battle rages in the unseen realm where truth itself is the prize. The prophecy is dangerous because it unmasks this conflict, showing humanity that they are not mere spectators, but participants in a spiritual war. Ignorance makes people blind soldiers. Revelation makes them warriors of light. That is why darkness fights so hard to cover the message. Lies, distractions, false teachings, all serve one purpose: to drown out the sound of the trumpet before it blows. But every time truth rises, even in whispers, darkness trembles. It knows the prophecy declares its defeat, its chains broken, its time running out. That is the essence of the conflict: conceal or reveal, enslave or awaken. And so the question falls to each person: will you live unaware, lulled into silence, or will you awaken to the reality behind the veil? The prophet spoke not to entertain, but to awaken sleepers. This is why the next step is so crucial. Understanding how this hidden battle awakens consciousness and demands a response. The prophecy is not just about nations, it is about you. When hidden truth finally comes to light, it does something profound. It awakens the human soul. Suddenly, what once felt ordinary becomes filled with meaning. The prophecy is not just about cosmic battles or distant nations. It is about opening your eyes to see beyond the veil of distraction. It is like stepping out of a dream and realizing the world around you is far more vivid, far more urgent than you ever imagined. This awakening often begins in small ways. A verse pierces your heart, a question refuses to leave your mind. A moment of silence feels heavier than 1,000 words. People who once lived only for survival or success begin to sense a higher calling. It is the moment you realize you are not an accident of biology, but a being crafted for eternity. That shift of perspective changes everything. How you see time, money, relationships, even suffering. Practical steps flow from this awakening. Some begin reading scripture not as ritual, but as revelation, uncovering treasures in books they once ignored. Others feel compelled to act differently, showing kindness where there was bitterness, seeking justice where there was apathy, praying not out of duty but out of hunger. It is proof that prophecy is not just information, it is transformation. When consciousness awakens, behavior follows. Yet awakening is only the beginning. For once a person sees, they are faced with a choice: to return to sleep or to live with eyes open. And this is where the prophecy becomes deeply personal. It calls each individual to make a decision, not just to believe in theory, but to take action in daily life. Which brings us to the next question. What is the personal call hidden within this prophecy, and how does it demand a response from you? The prophecy was never meant to remain distant or abstract. It is not simply about empires or cosmic signs. It is about you, your choices, your life. Every silenced word carries a personal invitation to rise above the noise of the world and align yourself with a greater purpose. The call is simple, yet demanding. It asks, what will you do with the truth once you know it? For some, this call means leaving behind destructive habits and patterns that chain the soul. For others, it means daring to live with integrity when the world rewards compromise. The prophecy is not just a warning of what is coming, it is a challenge to live differently today. It whispers to the heart, be ready, stay awake. Do not be lulled back into silence. Those who hear it cannot remain the same. Think of it like receiving a letter from a distant king, sealed with fire. You can ignore it and toss it aside, or you can open it and discover your part in a greater story. The prophecy is that letter. It declares that you were made for more than survival or distraction. You are called to be a light, a watchman, a witness in your generation. Ignoring it is a choice, but so is embracing it. And here lies the weight of the message. The personal call is not optional. To know the truth and do nothing is still a decision. To live awakened is to carry responsibility, but also to carry hope, which leads us to the final step in this journey, the future that awaits those who listen and the destiny of those who choose silence. Prophecy always points forward. It is a window into what lies ahead. The silenced words do not only expose the past or awaken the present, they unveil a destiny approaching with unstoppable force. A day of reckoning, a day of restoration, a day when every hidden thing is revealed. For those who embrace the call, the future is not fear, but hope, a kingdom unshakable, eternal, radiant with justice. But for those who choose silence, the picture is very different. The same light that comforts the faithful will expose the deceit of the careless. Prophets spoke of weeping and gnashing of teeth, of a time when excuses will vanish and truth will stand bare. It is not spoken to terrify, but to awaken, because the worst fate is not judgment itself, but being unprepared for it. And yet, even in judgment, the prophecy holds a promise. that evil will not have the final word. The powers that sought to suppress truth will crumble, the oppressors will fall, and creation itself will be renewed. Imagine a world without lies, without corruption, without fear. That is the horizon the prophets saw, and it is closer than we dare believe. So the prophecy ends where it began, not as a story of despair, but as a call to hope. The silenced words are now spoken, the hidden scroll is unsealed, and the invitation lies before us. The question is no longer what is the prophecy, but what will you do with it? And that is where our journey begins, with an introduction that will take us directly into the mystery they never wanted you to hear. Now that you've heard the prophecy they tried to silence, the question is no longer whether it exists, it's what you will do with it. Will you let it fade like another story, or will you let it ignite something inside you? Because prophecy was never meant to entertain. It was meant to awaken, to call you out of silence into a life of clarity, purpose, and courage. What would change in your life if you truly lived as though this world is heading toward a climax, just as the prophets declared? Would you speak differently, love differently, spend your time differently? These are not abstract questions. They are the decisions that shape destiny, and your response matters more than you think. I want to challenge you. Don't just listen, act. Open the scriptures yourself. Revisit the words of the prophets. Pay attention to the signs unfolding around you, and most importantly, choose not to fall back into silence, because silence is the very weapon that has kept generations blind. Break it, and you break free. If this message stirred something in you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to this channel, activate the notifications, and keep walking with us as we uncover the mysteries, prophecies, and truths they never wanted you to hear. The journey is only beginning, and you don't want to miss what comes next.